Hey players, so the Justice Department has released a 577-page report on the tragedy that occurred in Uvalde in 2022. Now, not only does this report provide more details on the police response to Uvalde, but also the aftermath of it and how officials handled the families in Uvalde. Attorney General Merrick Garland held a press conference where he apologized to the families of Uvalde and stated how the response as well as the handling of this tragedy was a complete failure.
The victims and survivors of the mass shooting at Robb Elementary on May 24th, 2022 deserve better. First and foremost, the 19 children and their 2 teachers who were stolen from their loved ones should be here today. They should have been targeted by a mass shooter. We must never forget the shooter's heinous act that day. And the victims and survivors should never have been trapped with that shooter for more than an hour as they waited for their rescue. The families of the victims and survivors deserve more than incomplete, inaccurate, and conflicting communications about the status of their loved ones. This community deserved more than misinformation from officials during and after the attack.
Now, for the most part, this report confirmed what we already knew and what we saw in the body camera footage. They interviewed 260 people, and they also went through thousands and thousands of pages of reports. Now, Attorney General Merrick Garland stated when they initially got to the scene, they did respond appropriately by going into the building. But whenever they heard those initial gunshots and they disengaged and left the building and did not go in and confront the suspect, that was not proper protocol, and that was not a part of their training. They were not supposed to wait. They were supposed to immediately engage. Attorney General Merrick Garland confirmed that the police did have knowledge of those students being in the room with that madman, and they could have saved lives if they had engaged the suspect. Now, we also learned that some of the students that were injured in that room that needed help were brought out of that room inappropriately. They were not handled correctly by EMS, which could have caused more injuries. We also learned that parents were given misinformation. Now, we already knew that, but this is the most devastating part, that some parents were told that their children survived when in fact their children were deceased. And vice versa. Some parents were told that their children were deceased when they were really alive. This scathing report not only criticizes the police response, but it also criticizes officials and the way they relayed information in regards to this tragedy. I mean, I covered this, so I remember how the misinformation was just flying. I remember being so confused by Applehead Abbott being the first one to speak on the tragedy and informing us that the suspect was already deceased and identifying them by name. I remember being so confused by that and like, that's not proper protocol. But in this report is confirming that the way they did things was completely wrong. Also, that they did not accommodate the people that only spoke Spanish, and Uvalde is an 85% Hispanic community. Now, some of the families of the victims have been speaking out after the release of this report. They did receive it a few days before Attorney General Merrick Garland released it publicly.
Waking up every day and continuing to walk out on these streets and walk to an HEB or drive to an HEB and see a cop that you know was standing there while our babies were murdered and bleeding out. It's hard enough that, but this community doesn't care, and I hope this makes y'all.
Now, the attorney for the Uvalde families, in my opinion, had the most important thing to say regarding the police response.
He was 140 pounds, soaking wet. Were they really afraid of this kid? No. They were afraid of his weapon.
I agree with what he said 100%. The police were definitely afraid of the weapon, and that cost so many children their lives. It is just ridiculous. Now, what's very interesting to me in this 577-page report, it identifies all of these failures by police officers and officials, but it does not identify anybody that's going to be charged in relation to this. So, players, I want to know what you all think. Do you think anybody should be charged? Of course, here at the Black Accurate News, I am sending my condolences, my love and prayers out to the families of the victims. This is just so very tragic, and I just wish them the best. All right, players, put your thoughts in the comments. This is Double D Mova reporting for the Black Accurate News.